You're listening to the Auricle Podcast with Ben Amoa.
Hello there.
What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Ben Amoa. Thank you for tuning in to the Auricle. And I was thinking, it's a really difficult thing. It is difficult to be a younger sibling. And not just a younger sibling, but the youngest of two. You see, I'm the second born of two brothers, me and Kofi. And it's always been me and Kofi. And Kofi's my older brother, and we've done a lot together. In fact, my mom forced him to babysit me since I was like 7 years old. And so he was like 14. And he had to pick me up sometimes, take me to his sport games, bring me to his high school events, and just always have to bring me tagging along with him. And I know that sounds rough. That sounds rough for him. But in all honesty, the reality is it was rough for me. It was rough for me because it seemed like no one ever knew my name. Being his younger brother and following him around, people would be like, "Hey, Kofi Jr." That was a big one. They'd be like, "Hey, little Kofi." And I was like, man, why are they calling me that? And the weirdest one, when they see me, they'd be like, "Oh, hey, Kofi's son." And I was like, that's my brother, not even my dad. But it bothered me because it seemed like I didn't have my own identity. And in those moments where they would never even call me by my actual name, I felt like they were like writing me off or something. I felt like people didn't really care who I was as Ben. And it's funny, looking back, seeing all the weird things they call me and how they would identify me. But in the moments, it was kind of rough. It was kind of rough that they wouldn't recognize me as my own person. So today, we have a mentor of mine, a really good friend named Pastor Eddie Hypolite, sharing his perspective on being written off and how he thinks we can overcome that. Thanks for tuning in.
My name is Eddie Hypolite. I'm from London. I'm a Londoner by birth. I am a pastor by calling and vocation. But presently, my call into ministry has stepped outside of pastoring and has moved into the area of professional development and just really working and writing, working with churches and working with leaders around the world and just traveling, training, inspiring. I'm writing at the moment. So I've got 2 books that should be coming out at the end of this year and next year. So that's where my calling is at the moment, and in terms of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Do you miss church pastoring?
Church pastoring, yeah.
You miss it?
Do I miss it?
Yeah.
Sorry, do I miss it? Yeah. There's certain aspects of it. There's certain aspects of it I miss. Certain aspects of it I don't miss. To be honest. And but what I am grateful for is that I still have a sense of my calling. So I might not be church pastoring, but I do have a sense of my calling as to where I'm supposed to be. The Lord is still putting me in contact with people. I'm working with my local church. So, the day-to-day ins and outs of church pastoring and whatnot. I won't miss it. It's the people engagement and continuing life and story of people that I suppose that I miss from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, boss, I want to get right in it, and you're a world traveler. People pay money for you to get you to their area, to get to their presence, so you can share with them.
Yeah.
And I think people do that because you have so much wisdom, but I know you have such an amazing story. But before that, people see Eddie Hypolite today being this pastor, this presenter, motivational speaker. But I've always been curious as someone who's seen you speak multiple times, like who was Eddie before all that? Like, what was that when you were in London?
Uh,
Who was that?
I had a member once call me to ask me if I would speak to her son, and she said, "I know, Pastor, because of your other life." In my other life, it's been a kind of turbulent journey in some parts. Really, it's just the story of the continued grace of God and the prayers of a godly mother. Throughout my teenage lives, I was in trouble a lot with the police as a juvenile growing up. As a result, I got taken out of my home and I was placed in a community homeschool, went into youth detention, and it kind of carried on into my 20s, carried on in a lot of ways into my 20s. I had a short reprieve. I was saved at 17 under the preaching of evangelist Dick Barron. He was, legendary youth director, youth leader, youth speaker, and just brilliant all round pastor and man. And so I was saved, and I was in the church, seriously in the church, between 17 and 19. I grew up in the church because my mother joined the church when I was 5. She was baptized when I was about 7, I should say. So we was brought to church, but I really found Christ for myself, having left and then come back at 17, and then left again at 19, and I stayed gone until I was 25. So really, it was like I said, the grace of God and the prayers of a godly mother that really brought me in both spaces between 17 and 19, and then brought me home again at 25, and to where I am now. As a 53-year-old man, I'm grateful for the grace of God and becoming the pastor that I finally became, and the father and the husband that I am now.
Wow. And I think what I want to know mostly, and like what's always stood out to me from your story, and like people, like, we never really know about the process it is to get to where someone is. It's easy to see someone when they're at their top, etc. But you have this quote, like you have this very popular line. I know you always say, God has a bigger pen.
Yeah.
You say that a lot, and it really inspires me. But I want to know for you, like, when did you realize that? What was going on when you, personally as Eddie, like, man, God has a bigger pen for me? Like, you must have felt some sort of rejection or some sort of reason that you needed to know that.
I think when God finally, God really brought that home to me. Actually, in the midst of my pastoring, when I tell you that, literally from a young kid, I've consistently been written off, not by family, but either because of my behavior or because of some of the things that I was pursuing. Because of the way in which the system, I was written off as being uneducatable. I remember around about 15, sat in front of an educational psychologist who said to my mum, because I was getting into so much problems at school, said to my mum, Mrs. Hypolite, the problem with Eddie is that he is just uneducatable. And when I went to school back in the 70s, when I was in high school, the two groups of people that were systematically written off out of the educational system back then in London, West London, where I was from, were young Black Caribbean boys like myself, or young Black boys of Caribbean parentage, and young white Irish boys. We were systematically weeded out of the educational system with that phrase. And so I've experienced it at different periods. And then coming into ministry, I think when God places a calling on your life and gives you a certain way of seeing yourself and seeing the work, it does create lots of conflict It does create lots of conflict. It does create lots of it creates lots of opposition, and yeah, just constantly written off. And it was God who just showed me, listen, Eddie, you've seen all throughout your life, and I'm reminding you now, for everybody that writes you off, I've got a bigger pen. you know. And so yeah, it's kind of been my mantra. It's kind of been my mantra, not only for my life but for other people as well, because so many people are going through life with a sense of just being written off. Yeah, that the story that they have is the story that will forever be, and it's just not, it's not true. The story that has been doesn't have to be the story that forever will be. God does write with a bigger pen. God does write newness into your life.
But like, how do you like actually like get over that? Like, I don't know, like when you fail tests, when you know that like your home life is struggling, when people tell you like when you try out for teams you don't make teams, or you apply to jobs you never get hired in the way you want to be doing. Especially like people say this like when they're graduating school, or just when they're in a crisis and they need something and sometimes like nothing is working out for them. It's like, what's that process, or like what goes on in your head? How do you push yourself to that point where you know that this isn't it?
I think what we do is we judge our success and we judge our value based on the fact, or based on the idea of the things that we want to achieving those things. And I think that the first place you need to begin with is defining the person you are and the values that define who you are, and the story that defines who you are. And I personally think that's where you have to begin, because if I don't get all the things that I want, does that mean that my life has no meaning, my life has no value, my story has no value, that I still cannot make an impact upon the world? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that I've had to readjust my expectations for some of the things that I want to do. Take that same skill, take that same enthusiasm, take that same determination, and refocus it into a different area. I'm just speaking from myself personally in terms of creating that space, that I don't lose sense of the fact that my life as a person, doesn't lose its meaning, doesn't lose its sense of value, doesn't lose its sense of purpose. So if you don't get what you want, that doesn't mean that you can't be the person that you truly desire to be. Now if the person that you truly desire to be is only focused around achieving certain things, you're going to have a problem, because sometimes life is just that way. Sometimes life is just that way, that I feel you, but it's just not going to be. You're just not going to have this. You can have, but it's just not going to be this. You can be successful, but it's just not going to be in this area. You know what I mean? And that isn't a means of discouraging, because some people will go for like 5 and 10 years, 15 years until they get what it is that this is what I've been wanting to do, and this is what I'm going to do. And the key with those people is that they don't lose their sense of their value, period. They don't lose their sense of their value, their purpose, the fact that they are contributing people to humanity, the fact that their life still has meaning, the fact that their story still has, they don't lose that core sense of who they are. And so that's why 15 years later, they'll do that. There's that guy who played for the Lakers. Saw him last season. I forgot his name, but he played in the G League. You know what I mean? Or the D League. He played in the D League, and he was playing in that league for years, hoping to get onto the Lakers team for years. And then they called him up. They called him up, and he played 2 games with them last season. He played 2 games with them last season. But the thing that really inspired them, about him, was that even though he wasn't getting into the main team, listen, when it came to rebounds in the G League, on the Lakers team, top rebounder, top this, top that, top that, and he still wasn't getting a spot. But it never, in any way, through season after season after season, it never dampened his enthusiasm. He still had a deep sense of who he was. He was a leader in the G League team, etc., etc. So I'm not saying never give up on your dream, but I'm saying when your dream and the lack of achieving that makes you lose all sense of your value altogether, maybe you need to find another dream, because there's no way you should lose that sense of your value as a human being, your worth as a human being. So.
And that's what I was going to ask you next, because I was going to ask, because you said something interesting. You said you have to refocus, right?
Yeah.
If things aren't going well. And I was going to ask you, like, what's the difference then of refocusing and settling? But you kind of answered it there, because you're saying, like, if you're able to still see yourself as a valuable human being, then you're not settling.
No, you're not settling, because you're still growing. And that's the important thing, because, hey, listen, for me, every season is a season of growth. Just because just because it's a bad season, it doesn't mean that you can't grow in bad seasons. All seasons together, make for growth. All seasons together make for growth. All season, make for a deepening of who you are and an expanding of who you are as a person. So, don't for a moment think that you can't be, don't for a moment think that you still can't be a person of worth and value.
So then why do you think, like, people write other people off? Like, what is it about us that makes us do that?
I think some people write people off because they have preconceived ideas about them and they don't want those ideas to be informed by anything else. I think sometimes people will write you off because they just don't have patience with your growth, and they don't really have a vested interest in your journey either. Everything takes time to grow. Everything takes time to grow, and unless you're going to be patient with that process, when a farmer plants in spring, he ain't looking in June for that crop. He knows that harvest doesn't come until September, so he ain't going to be impatient. Everything takes growth. And I think we write people off because we don't have that vested interest. We're not patient with their growth. I think, it's easier sometimes to see the worst than to hope for the best in people. For a myriad of reasons. I think sometimes we write people off in the hope that what we see and what we are defining them to be, they will be. Because sometimes, people can see the potential of your growth and they don't want you to shine that much. You shining that much actually shows up their deficiency sometimes. You being more than their opinion of you shows how small their opinion is. And I think sometimes people intentionally don't want you to grow and write you off because it shows up. It shows their level of humanity or their lack of humanity, I should say. So I think there's numbers and numbers of reasons.
But, like, how do we, like, invest into something that isn't showing fruit at the moment? Like, isn't it kind of like almost like impossible? Like, why would you do it? Like, logically, I guess isn't there like a lack of logic to do that?
Yeah.
Like, if I don't see someone producing.
Yeah.
Or like, it's like, how can I not, like, write them off? Like, it's tempting to write them off because it's like, why would I want to do that? Take that risk.
I think you write people off if a person is, if you employ somebody to do a specific task and that person on their CV says, I can do all of those things, and then you turn around and in the process of the work you realize, listen, not only can this person not do what it is we employed them to do, they can't do most of everything that we do as a company. And you realize that they lied, then you can write that off and then you go and look for a new person. But if a person comes to you and they say, look, I can't do everything here I can do 20% of what it is. But when it comes to learning, I'm a fast learner. I'm a committed learner. I learn quickly. I adapt quickly. Then you're going to invest in that because you see the potential of the person. You see the potential of the person. You see that they have, you see that they have a desire to learn, a desire to grow, and a desire to invest. And as they work, you see that they have a really good work ethic and they have a really good learning. They really have a good learning commitment. Then you really have to invest in that person. I believe that you kind of owe it to yourself just to see, you owe it to yourself as a learning curve for yourself as an employer, as a leader, as a person working with somebody. You owe it to yourself to actually take that journey of patience with another person's growth and dig deep into yourself to find the things that can bring out the best in that person. So I'm not saying that you can't write people off. I'm just saying don't be so quick to write people off until you've actually made that investment, until you've taken the time to make that investment.
Wow. That's facts. That's facts.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I'm not saying don't write them off, but I mean, like, Lord have mercy, you're going to write them off without reading any of the pages of their life? Come on now, man.
Jeez.
Or you're just going to look at the book cover and say, nah, I'm not interested. Come on, man. At least open up the book cover and read the preface.
That's right.
I mean, at least get a couple pages in.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, Pastor Eddie, what would you tell somebody right now, like people listening, they feel written off, they feel like giving up, or they are living their life kind of attaching their value to their achievements?
Yeah. I would say, look, you've got to refocus on, was it your achievements that got you to where you are? Or was it your skill, your gifting, your determination, and all the things that you brought to that got you to where you are? I have a friend, and he just resigned from teaching, turning 60. And we just saw each other about a couple of months ago. He had this glazed over look on his face, said, look, I've just been forced to resign. He just wasn't being treated right by his employers. And he says, I'm about to turn 60. What is it that I'm going to do? He says, what am I going to do? I said, what are you going to do, bruv? I said, what are you not going to do? Because I was talking with another friend of mine, and the two of us were talking about how we refocus. Funny enough, all three of us were pastors. All three of us are pastors. All three of us have been youth directors. All three of us have been chaplains. But he's working in tertiary education now. My friend and I were talking about how we're in the process of refocusing all that skill into this specific area of professional development. And by the time we finished speaking with him, I said, look at all the things that you've been doing over all of these years. We focus all our energy in this one space and don't think that we can transfer any of these skills. But look at all these skills that you have, and look at all these areas that are now available to you for you to refocus the skills. But what got him to where he was his determination, his work ethic, his value system. There was so much different things that actually got him to where he was, and he brought that to bear on the job that he did. So my thing was, don't define yourself by the job, define the job by who you are, but don't define who you are by the job. You know what I mean?